Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Rein Horsemanship. I'm Luke Brown, and I'm very excited to be with you here today. Today is Training Tip Tuesday, and before I get going on the training tip, I want to let you know, and now the training tip has to do with the horse I'm on, and his name is Chooch. And again, I've done a few Facebook Lives with him. I guess he's getting pretty popular. This is a really nice quarter horse that I've been working with and had serious issues about sensitivity with his ears and his head and face, and didn't want to be touched anywhere in that area. And now I can just snuggle right up to him and pet on him, and he's not bothered at all by me being around his head. And that's something that will help you through on a actual training video in the future. But today for Training Tip Tuesday, I wanted to talk about teaching a horse to neck rein using just one rein. Now, there's a lot of people that teach different ways to neck rein, and there are a lot of effective ways to do it, and this is one of them. It's just using one rein to neck rein. Instead of using the inside rein to bump on them when they tip their nose to the outside, when you're trying to neck rein them to the opposite direction, instead of bumping on them with that inside rein, you just let that inside rein be relaxed and slack, and you just use your outside rein for the pressure until they start to tip their nose in the direction you're going. Now, one of the biggest keys to neck reining is that the horse tips his nose in the direction you want to move. And so it's the opposite side of where the neck rein is. Now, you can teach a horse pretty easily to neck rein if you do it correctly, and you can teach it. A lot of people assume that you can only use a snaffle bit for lateral pressure, for lateral directional pressure, or plow reining or directional reining, but that's not accurate. That's not entirely accurate. While that is the main reason I use snaffle bits, I also teach horses to neck rein in snaffle bits. So if you've never heard of that, here's a little tip for you, and here's something that can help out. So I do use snaffle bits to teach a horse to neck rein, and eventually when they get soft enough at neck reining and directional reining, then I'll move and lateral flexion and vertical flexion. Then I'll move to a more of a curb bit or a shank bit and help the horse develop that way with the one-handedness. But you can manage a horse one-handed with a snaffle bit. And here's the way you do it. So for neck reining, if I want to neck rein to the left, and I'll show you this in just a second, but I'm going to talk you through it first. If I want to neck rein a horse to the left, like Chooch below me, I have the reins in my left hand, and and now I don't necessarily have to have the reins in my left hand, but it is easier to use the reins in your left hand if you're turning or neck reining to the left. You just have more mobility to that side, to the left, if you're using your left hand. So I'm gonna hold the rein. Now, I can do this with two hands or one hand. I'm gonna do it with one hand just to show you how to do it. But if you're gonna do it with one hand, you have to allow the inside rein, or the rein in the direction that you're moving, to be slack. And then you're gonna use your outside rein, and you're gonna lay it across the neck. And then you're gonna start to ask him to turn. Now, if a horse typically, especially in a snaffle bit, if a horse feels pressure on one side, if they feel that pulling pressure, which is what they're going to feel right now, they're going to feel he's feeling pulling pressure on his right side of his mouth. But I'm asking him to turn to the left and actually tip his nose to the left. So what I'm doing is I'm going to teach him to ignore the pressure in his mouth and to kind of lean against that pressure, while at the same time yielding the pressure on his neck. So the rein is going to come across his neck. He's going to feel the pressure across his neck, and he's going to feel the pressure on the right side of his mouth, kind of a pulling pressure. And so initially, what the horse is going to do is to look to the right. They're going to look to the right. Now, in the camera, it looks like I'm looking left, but I'm talking about looking right. So, and it can go either way, but let's assume I'm turning left, and so I lay the rein across his right neck, and he feels pull on the right side of the mouth, and he's gonna tip his nose to the right. And that's natural, because you've taught him up to this point to yield to pressure, to that pulling pressure, to yield that way. So he's feeling that pressure in the mouth. He's putting his mouth to the right, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna just hold that pressure and ask him to go forward. Now, you're not gonna put a ton of pressure on this rein, because you don't want to pull his mouth and hurt his mouth. You just want to put enough pressure to make him feel a little uncomfortable and want to try to find the out, find the release of pressure. And so what you're doing initially is you're going to wait for your horse to tip his nose just a little bit to the left. So initially he's going to tip his nose to the right, and he's going to hold it there, hold it there, hold it there. He's probably going to turn right. He's going to keep turning right. He's going to keep tipping his nose right. But what you want to do is keep him moving forward and keep that neck rein on. And eventually, now I'm going in a lot of circles right now because I'm kind of doing it as I'm talking you through it. Eventually, the horse is going to either shift his body, his shoulders to the left, or he's going to start to tip his nose to the left. Whichever one he does, if he shifts his shoulders to the left, you're going to release that pressure because you want him to start to get the idea that going left is the key. And so whether it's the shoulders or the mouth or the nose that tips left or moves left, release that pressure. Take the rein off and let him go straight for a while. Then you're going to pick that rein back up and put pressure on the right side of the neck, the right side of the mouth, and you're going to ask him to turn left. And pretty soon, he's probably, the first thing he's going to do is start to turn left with his shoulders. So he's starting to move his shoulders to the left, and that's a good start. But now what you want to do is start to get him to tip his nose to the left instead of tip his nose to the right. Because you can tell when a horse is poorly neck reined, if you neck rein him to the left, they're going to tip their nose to the right. If you neck rein them to the right, they're going to tip their nose to the left. And that's a horse that hasn't been trained properly. And so I'm going to put that rein on, and I'm going to hold that pressure. Now, eventually, after let's say he gets it right 5 to 10 times, then I'm going to start, I would say at least 10 times. Then I'm going to start holding that pressure. And even if he moves his shoulder to the left, or now I'm going to the right, even if he moves his shoulder in that direction, I'm still not going to let up on the pressure until he starts to tip his nose that direction. So now I'm going right. I have the rein across his left neck, and I'm going to wait until he starts to tip his nose to the right. Now, he doesn't have to tip it completely. He just has to tip it a little bit. I mean, slightly. If he even thinks right by twitching his ear to the right or something, excuse me, then I'm going to release that pressure. I'm going to take the rein off of his neck and let him go straight. And then I'm going to keep up that process, and pretty soon he's going to start tipping his nose to the right when he feels the neck rein across his left side. Even though he's feeling pulling on the left side of his mouth, he's going to tip his nose to the right because I'm teaching him to yield to that pressure and basically ignore the pressure in the mouth and listen to the pressure on the neck. And that's how you start teaching them to neck rein with the snaffle. Now, you can teach them in other ways, but this is one way. There's 4 or 5 different ways that I'm going to be teaching you, but that's a tip that I have for today on how to get a horse to turn that way. Now, to neck rein the direction you want. Now, you're going to find you might feel a little frustrated initially. Got flies all over. You might feel frustrated initially because the nose of your horse is going to tip in the opposite direction you want him to go. But don't worry about it. Just keep that pressure on. Remember, don't make it too intense. If you try to force him to turn his nose to the right, excuse me, you're going to get a real flustered horse, and he might end up turning over or just getting really frustrated. So don't do that. Just put a light pressure through the rein and wait on him, and as soon as he starts to tip his nose in the direction of your neck rein, the way you want to go, then you release that pressure, and pretty soon you lay that rein on his neck, and he's going to tip his nose in the opposite direction of where the rein is. So if your left rein comes across his neck, he's going to tip his nose to the right, and he's going to move right, and that's when you start to really get a beautiful neck rein. Now, I used to take a month or 2 to get a horse to really learn how to neck rein. Now I can do it in an hour or 2. And of course, they're not perfect at it. And in an arena, they're going to be much better than out on the trail. It's always harder for a horse to do what they did in an arena out on the trail because there's so much more distraction and it's harder for them to listen. But you start in an enclosed area, a more controlled environment, and work through that. And then you can start doing it out on the trail as well. Hope that tip helped you guys, and hope you have a wonderful day. Until next time, stay safe in the saddle.